Come, please. Lot of space and a sense of space. Basketball courts and then football ground and cricket ground, and of course this is also part of our campus.
This also
Yes,
part.
we bought this space planned recently, so till
Okay.
the end of the place where we can also have a formal conversation.
Professor, good to see you.
He's a special advisor to me and also a member of the governing body of the university. You met.
I'll go back at 2 o'clock.
Speaking about the historical underpinnings of the relationship between both Afghanistan and India, Pandit Nehru, in this conference in March 1947, prophetically remarked, and I quote, "If you would know India, you have to go to Afghanistan and Western Asia, to Central Asia, to China and Japan, and to the countries of Southeast Asia. There you will find magnificent evidence of the vitality of India's culture, which spread out and influenced vast numbers of people," unquote. This is what marks today's lecture. This is the spirit behind our Chancellor, Mr. Naveen Jindal's contribution of the iconic Afghan national flag, which flies proudly on Wazir Akbar Khan Hill in Kabul, and which was dedicated by India's Foreign Minister last year to the people of Afghanistan. Please join me, ladies and gentlemen, in welcoming Dr. Abdullah to our university to deliver the distinguished Jindal Global Lecture. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor for me to be here in Jindal Global University. Thank you, Professor Rajkumar, for inviting me here. And thank you, Professor Sudarshan, Professor Chawla, professors, students, ladies and gentlemen, once again, Assalamu alaikum and good morning to you. It's an opportunity for me, a great opportunity for me to be in this center of excellence and talk about India-Afghanistan relations, which goes centuries back in the history of our part of the world. Currently, I can only call it relations based on mutual respect, friendship, and partnership, and based on the history, culture, and long-standing relations, which is not just government to government, but peoples to people, and has its roots in the history of mankind. The cultural affinity, people-to-people interactions, trade, sometimes disagreement, but mostly mutual respect, civilizational commonality. These are the basic foundations of our relations. And all of those from a very strong foundations for building up our relations, expanding exchanges, seeking mutual benefit, and more importantly, to help to foster a peaceful, dynamic, productive, and prosperous region. In my opinion, in today's competitive and fast-moving world, we cannot live in seclusion or be cut off from the rest of subcontinent, on one hand Central Asia and parts of the Middle East on the other hand. If we trace our steps backward, we reach the time that Indus Valley civilization, the Seleucid Empire, and the Maurya Empire, to the time Greco-Bactrian, which later became part of Indo-Greek kingdom. Having gone through the different religious and cultural influences until the arrival of Islam in the 7th century, people lived in what we would today call a multicultural society. Even then, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs lived side by side. Between 10th to 18th century, we saw the rise of new empires and conquerors. During these eras, especially during the Mughal period, many Afghans began emigrating to India due to political unrest. Even in times of conquest, people were intermingled, cultural traits and knowledge was shared, and trade took place. In more modern time, we inspired each other in the struggle against colonialism and later after independence for non-alignment. During the Cold War, we disagreed on the Soviet policies in Afghanistan. While this was in the government levels, peoples-to-people relations remained as warm as you can imagine. It continued, befriend each other, enjoy each other, music, films, food, until natural reset of relations took place between both countries when both countries were faced with the common threats emanating from extremism and terrorism. Then 2001 was a new era in Afghanistan, the start of a new era in Afghanistan. And there, India was one of the major partners in helping Afghanistan towards stabilization, development, betterment of life for people of Afghanistan, and regional cooperation. India has been the 5th biggest donor country, spending over $2 billion in the past 14 years in helping us in education, health, infrastructure, agriculture, capacity building, and I can only call it multi-dimensional support, as a result of which lives have changed for millions and millions of Afghans in our country for better. So I would like to thank India for helping us throughout these years. At the same time, being in this center of excellence, once again I should thank Professor Raj Kumar for his vision and Naveen Jindal for its generosity and also his investment in the future of this region. It's not just India. Investment in higher education is investment for peace, stability, prosperity, well-being of mankind. And doing it with the manner that was explained to me, that Mr. Naveen Jindal is very much hands-off as far as academic work is concerned in this university. It is unique. So please give him my best regards and thanks. This aspect of humanity is what we need more and more in order for our younger generation to prosper, or for our nations to be more hopeful about the future of mankind. I would like to also thank Mr. Daudzai, Nurullah Daudzai, who will, by opening a university next year, which he made a firm promise that this will be 2016, and Jindal Global University is helping him to establish an education center in northern Afghanistan. Thank you, Mr. Daudzai, for doing that. And again, thank you for helping us, helping our civil service, our Civil Service Institute. Thank you for the scholarships and also for readiness to help us help Afghan universities. And utilizing this opportunity, I should emphasize one fact, that take Afghanistan as your partner in universities in Afghanistan as partners, and do the fundamental, help us with the fundamental capacity building in support, and the government of Afghanistan will also be supportive of your work there. We will do our own part in it. The future relies on centers of excellence in education. Quality education is something that this region has the potential to produce and share it. And then that's how we can prosper together and how can we be more hopeful about the future of our people. In today's world, which mankind is faced with big challenges, including terrorism and radicalism, while we have tried many other ways in between, education, in quality education, in right education is the answer to most of the challenges that we are faced with. Afghanistan National Unity Government has made education and higher education and quality education as one of its priorities. And in this field, happy to have the honor of partnership with Jindal Global University. The way ahead of us is arduous, but with lots of potentials, lots of hopes, and lots of lights. And together we can make this journey easier for ourselves. Afghanistan was deprived from the opportunities in the past 3.5 decades. The past 13 years was a different phase in Afghanistan, but earlier than that, our professors left the country. Students, the education was disrupted many times. So we are lagging behind. But learning from the experience of institutions like Jindal Global University will help us not to shortcut, but to get where we ought to be sooner rather than later. In today's world, a day behind means a lot. But at the same time, technology and new sense of sharing knowledge. Whenever there was a sense of controlling knowledge and keeping it to the chest, closer to the chest, rather than sharing it with the others, that's where the humanity has lagged behind. And with the sense of giving to the others for the common good, that is where where things can turn into a win-win situation for everybody, and I see that sense. When I first met you and your colleagues in Kabul, I was only planning a visit to India, which was not finalized at that time. But I decided that if my trip to India was finalized, then I will certainly pay a visit to your campus, and happy to be here. I'm going to miss the lunch which you had generously offered, but promise that do it some other times. When this campus grow, I see that your ambitions and your colleagues' ambitions to develop it further and further, what you have achieved in 5-6 years' time, it could be a journey of lifetime, 1 or 2 generations. And the pursuit of this goal by yourself and your dedicated colleagues, we are already proud of what you have done, and we will be more proud. Talking about Afghanistan, the September 11 attacks, it was like a wake-up call for the world. And then Afghanistan came out of isolation. Even before that, India was helping Afghanistan in fighting against terrorists. India was amongst the only countries. Post new situation in Afghanistan, formation of the interim and transitional government and elected governments in Afghanistan since 2002, a lot has happened in Afghanistan, and Afghanistan has achievements to be proud of it, including in the education. Education was banned earlier by Taliban. For men and women, for men only type of education was allowed. It was a difficult situation. So it was like rising from the ashes of war, what we did and our nation did. And many countries helped Afghanistan, and Afghan people also made a lot of sacrifices. Now there is the opportunity. At the same time, the challenges. The challenge of terrorism, extremism, insecurity. At the same time, dealing with the priorities of the people, an underdeveloped country, even beforehand, before the war, a landlocked country. Today, with the efforts of the Afghan people, inshallah, hopefully, Afghanistan can play its role which historically it has played, connecting different regions of this part of the world as a land bridge between South Asia and Central Asia in other parts of Asia. Those potentials are there. Afghanistan is potentially rich from the natural resources point of view in many other ways. But to invest on human resources, that is the answer. And hopefully, together with the help of our partners, we can overcome those challenges and facilitate an opportunity which will not only be for the Afghans, but the peoples of the region altogether. Today, thousands of Afghan students are seeking education here in India, and I am happy to see Afghan students here as well in this campus, and I'll be more happy to see more of them, and we will facilitate it from our part. We rely on you. We rely on your support in this field. And while short-term courses, very concentrated and focused opportunities will be helpful. We can work it out in two sort of lines. On top of this, deep institutional links, which will lay its marks, whether it is in developing the educational centers in Afghanistan and helping them and sharing your experience, and or in building a viable civil service or civil service institute in Afghanistan, or in other areas of education. So, ladies and gentlemen, while I'm greatly honored to be with you, but at the same time, Sunday morning for you, perhaps it was the only time to have a little bit of rest. It comes with a little bit sense of guilt for me as well to keep you here. So that's why though you kindly called it Distinguished Global Lecture, I didn't want to sound like lecturing you, but I wanted to admire you, to see your happy faces and be happy, and share a few words about relations between Afghanistan and India, which has a much, much stronger foundation that you can imagine, in much, much brighter future than we can imagine. Next time, no Sunday lecture. And very happy and delighted to be here. Thank you all. Thank you.
You mentioned education as one of the areas where Afghanistan India can help Afghanistan. What are the other areas that you would like to see India's help? I'm talking in the context of there was some talk on India supplying arms or military hardware. In that context, my question is in that context.
Thank you, Mr. Toria. You mentioned 85, and had you not mentioned with it that a young person, so in terms of areas of cooperation between India and Afghanistan, there is no limit to what India can do with Afghanistan, and there is no exclusion of an area of cooperation. Based on our national interests, we seek cooperation, and India has been helpful. Based on our priorities, they have helped us throughout. So it's inclusive of all areas of cooperation. They have helped us in education, in health, in building infrastructure, in building capacity, and also there has been military-to-military relations. So it's a comprehensive and strategic partnership, which forms the basis of our relationship, can only expand. Professor Pavlovsky?
Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Abdullah. It's really a privilege and honor to have you here. My question is, India and Afghanistan face somehow the same challenge and dilemma to have economic development in time of climate change. And the challenge is that climate change really poses a lot of questions about how to make development sustainable, how not to jeopardize the future of our children, how to reduce emissions and so on. And later this year in Paris we had the conference of Paris 21 when India and Afghanistan need to make some suggestions, but also to expect how the distribution of wealth should match the challenge of the climate change. So I wonder what will be your vision on how India and Afghanistan can develop in the next 20 or 40 years, in time which is very different from when the Western countries, Britain and France, developed 100 years ago without the challenge of climate change.
And the climate change, there are different attitudes towards it, and also there are different explanations how mankind has attributed to it, and then the approaches of different countries, developed countries and developing countries and emerging economies are different. It is the right balance between development and as well as taking care of our globe. That's the approach which countries like India can pursue. And countries like Afghanistan, which is underdeveloped, we are not contributing to the emissions related to the climate change, but we are suffering because of the consequence of it, and nobody is immune to that. Having taken that into account, learning from the experience, energy use and efficiency in energy use and renewable energy, these are areas that those countries in need can focus more in coming to this campus. And it was explained to me that it's part of it is solar energy. This is a good example. Here you might teach climate and challenges of climate change, but at the same time that people can see it for themselves. It is a common challenge for all of human beings. The developing countries and emerging economies have not utilized the potentials for their growth as of yet. To create that balance is more challenging for these countries than those countries which have developed already.
Ambassador Yogen Kumar.
Your Excellency, my name is Yogen Kumar. I used to be ambassador in Tajikistan during the time when I had the privilege of meeting yourself and other Afghan leaders. So I'm particularly happy to see you here in your high position, and wish you all good luck and every success in the effort to the construction of your great country. My question actually was regarding the new talks, or the talks which are now being initiated with the Taliban, and to what extent do you see the impact of these talks on the future shape of the present government?
Thank you, Ambassador. It's good to see you again here. Talks have not started as of yet. Contacts are being made, preparations are being made in order to facilitate the talks. And once it starts, then we will see how it moves forward. As far as we are concerned, the government of Afghanistan and the absolute majority of the people of Afghanistan, we are for reconciliation, for efforts for making peace in our country, but dignified and durable and just peace, where the rights of the people are preserved and the Constitution of Afghanistan is upheld. That's the broad framework for entering to talks. It has not started yet. We hope that it will start. Then the start of the talk will be the start of the process. Our determination to pursue that path is there. The intention of the other side, which is creating problems and using violence in order to achieve their goals, currently called Taliban or terrorist groups or associated groups associated with terrorist groups, will be tested once they enter the talks.
Student Vinay.
Good morning, sir. I'm Vinay, pursuing my Master's in International Relations here at Jindal Global University. So, given the location of Afghanistan at the crossroads of important geopolitical regions of the world, which you alluded to in your speech earlier, and the transition that Afghanistan is undergoing, how difficult has it been for Afghanistan to imbibe the values of a pluralistic liberal democracy in its attempt to build or rebuild itself as a nation state? And what lessons do you think Afghanistan can offer to other nations in similar positions? Thank you very much.
Okay. In terms of embracing democracy and democratic values, again in 2001, after the creation of the interim government, we started the first baby steps in this regard by having the constitution of Algeria and our constitution ratified, then 3 rounds of presidential elections and 3 rounds of parliamentary, 2 rounds of parliamentary elections, the other ones upcoming provincial council elections in the past 13, 14 years. The desire of the people for self-determination and exercising their rights based on the Constitution of Afghanistan, which the rights of the people of our diverse nation, but one nation, is enshrined in it, is that. Do we call it as a functioning political process? No, we have learned, we have made mistakes, we have learned from our mistakes, and the future of the country will depend on the political process mainly, which ensures the participation of the people in choosing their destiny, in issues of governance, justice, inclusive growth, and the rights of the people. The last round of elections was complicated earlier than one. It was the same thing. We are moving towards reforming our institutions. At the same time, while our focus is in this area, we have to deal with the issues of insecurity and terrorism-related issues, and also deliver based on the priorities of the people. All the issues which are being discussed in other countries, unemployment, poverty, illness, and development are the priorities of the country together. But the only way ahead is democracy and building a nation state based on citizens' right, which is that process is irreversible. It has its own shortfalls. We are not complacent about what is there. The freedom of speech and women participation in the political as well as in political life, in the decision-making process, in representative bodies, and also in the administration, in all systems of all aspects of the administration. These are there, but these are all very early stages, but the path is very clear for the people of Afghanistan. It's not reversible.
Much more.
Thanks a lot, Your Excellency, for gracing us with your presence. I'm a faculty member with the Jindal School of International Affairs. My name is Dipanshu. I just had a quick question with respect to the deadlocks that we've been seeing with respect to a lot of regional level summits with SAARC. And you've seen that the role of India's relationship with Afghanistan extends beyond the bilateral partnership as well, if the region as a whole has to develop. So where do you see that India's partnership with Afghanistan can help combat a certain level of issues with respect to India and Pakistan, or even in terms of going beyond that, or India and Iran, for that matter? Because the geopolitical geography itself is a very important factor, moving beyond the bilateral association of India and Pakistan. Thank you.
It is already the relations between India and Afghanistan. It's bilateral relations and also areas of regional cooperation, and also I should mention that India facilitated for Afghanistan to become a member of SARC in the cooperation in that multilateral organizations there. If you look at it in a broader sense, the need for energy in subcontinent and South Asia, and the resources of energy in Central Asia, this is a reality which is there. The industries here in the need for the products in Central Asia, the connectivity. These are all issues which bind us together on top of historical and cultural relations. So I can call it a very unique relations, which can only develop for good, for better. At the same time, there are challenges that we have to deal with it. We are not connected through land transportation linkages. This is something that we have to work on. It takes other countries as well, and the goodwill from all of us. So the potential is there, the opportunity is there. It depends how best we utilize it.
Any questions from media or diplomats? For any others? From media? Okay, Manoj, another student.
Good morning, sir. Myself, Manoj Kumar, pursuing my first year master degree in Jindal School of International Affairs. My question to you is the regular training of Afghan soldiers and the Afghan National Police in Indian and military academies and all. How it has helped in developing the confidence of these soldiers and the young officers that go back to Afghanistan, as we are seeing the pull-out of the international forces. Thank you.
Like in other areas of education, also the opportunities which is there for our cadets in our ANA, in the support from India, has been an important contribution. And that's an ongoing process. That's at different levels and at different military educational center, and it's a contribution towards capacity building and stabilization of Afghanistan, and it is appreciated. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive, for your candid responses to all the questions. I was hoping somebody would ask this question, but since nobody has asked, I would like to ask this question. I know the title of your lecture is The Future of Afghanistan-India Relations, but no aspect of the Afghanistan-India relations could be talked about really without talking about Pakistan. So I would like you to briefly reflect about the context of Pakistan in both these relationships and how do you see the future?
You should have asked me when you visited me in my residence. Perhaps they will be bored about this subject. Yes, they have heard a lot about it. Afghanistan is in a unique situation. And Afghanistan has considered pursuit of its national interests in the context of the foreign policy, in the context of national interest. And based on that, has developed its relations in the region and beyond the region. And while countries have different relations and challenging relations in between themselves, when it came to Afghanistan, since we were in need for stable relations with countries around us, countries of the neighborhood, and also we were in need of strengthening the partnership with our donor partners. For example, the example of the United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran is a good one. The United States is the biggest contributor in terms of military and civilian assistances to Afghanistan. It is a critical partner. Iran is a neighboring country which we have historical, cultural, good neighborly relations for centuries. We were in need of having good relations with both. And we didn't want the aspects of their bilateral relations to overshadow our situation. This has been the approach by Afghanistan. The approach of the countries then has been different. For example, in the example that I have shown, it was not based on our effort, but it was also the leaders of the United States which understood the need for Afghanistan, and also the leaders in the Islamic Republic of Iran, which they pursued their friendly attitude towards Afghanistan. But then some other countries have different sort of calculus in this regard. We think foreign policy and independent foreign policy based on national interest of the country, it is sovereign right of every country, and to exercise it in a way which you have maximum areas of national interest and also common interest will be the right pursuit. And there are issues of perception which has to be dealt with. There are issues of substance which has to be dealt with. So far, no country has successfully tried to have the right of veto over our relations. I'm not saying that there has not been tendencies in this regard, but successfully nobody has tried this. So it's imagine when I say subcontinent, just the economic side of it. Is it against anybody's interest to have this connectivity of trade, transit, energy, goods? No, it's in everybody's interest. And it's the challenge would be to overcome those mentalities which keeps us stuck in our old ideas rather than helping us to be forward-looking and looking towards the future.
Excellency.
A very long answer to a very short question.
Excellency, we have Professor Asma Khan, who is actually Pakistani but a full-time faculty member.
Assalamu alaikum. I just wanted to ask you a question, especially in the context of the ongoing probability of talks between the Afghan government and the Taliban. How do you see the role of China? Do you think it can play the role of an honest broker? And do you think it will be able to provide any peace dividends to both the Taliban and to Pakistan to uphold any ensuing probable agreement between the Taliban and the Afghan government?
The role of China, we welcome any impartial engagement by any country in our region in order to facilitate for the talks or negotiations or to provide support for it. But the negotiations, the talks has to be Afghan-led and inclusive for the Afghans. That's the key. China has very good relations with Pakistan and Pakistan has a role to play because of the certain circumstances which are prevailing there. Any support is welcomed, but the key is that the negotiations, once it starts, it has to be acted in an inclusive way. Thank you.
Sir, could you please throw some light upon the mechanisms and the strategies being used to bring Taliban into fold when we talk of reconciliation process?
As I mentioned earlier, so far it's only contacts made in order to facilitate the talks. And then the path ahead of us is longer. It's not just one. Once it starts, we have the parameters, very clear parameters for those negotiations, a very clear framework. And then we see the attitude of the other side. What it takes, it will take them to realize that they cannot win militarily. It will take the Taliban to delink themselves with terrorist organizations and give up violence. So these are expectations, but we are at the very early stages at the moment.